What's up? Back in the shop. First ever knife build, no experience. Let's get started. I started out by sketching a rough idea of what I wanted the blade to look like. My original idea was to use that saw blade, but I decided against that and I just went and got a piece of steel that I then traced that design onto. After getting it clamped down, I then used my angle grinder to get the rough shape of the blade cut out. I did use the Dremel for the inside of the curve and some of the hard to reach places. Now it's time to give the blade a better shape. To do so, I used the angle grinder with the sanding disc, the Dremel, and a number of files. I had decided I wanted to put a bottle opener on the back end of the blade, so after sketching that up, I pre-drilled and cut it out. Here I wanted to hit the faces of the blade with the sander just before I started working on the bevel. After marking the center of my blade, I used a chainsaw file to set the plunge line. I kept double checking to make sure I wasn't going to file past that center line I marked. After doing that to both sides, I took the angle grinder with the flap disc back out and started working on the bevel. I have already looked into how to make a couple beveling jigs because I wasn't entirely happy with how my hand grinding turned out. To finish it out and still trying to keep that nice clean bevel line, which I was unable to get, I went to some files. Next step was to get some hand sanding in before the heat treat, and I only sanded up to 600. After getting the blade to where it was no longer magnetic, I did just let it normalize in the air before heating it back up once again to no longer magnetic and heat treating. I do recommend not doing this in a plastic container, it's just all I had. After that cooled down, I decided to start working on the handle. After getting it roughly traced up, I used the jigsaw to get it cut out. Here I'm using the Dremel to start cutting out the pins. After getting the rough shape of the wood and pins cut out, I decided to start drilling the pinholes. Then, using those holes as a template, I marked out where they would be on the handle. Using my hand planer, I knocked out some of the bulk thickness of the handles while still ensuring that I was going to have a flat surface to glue up. After that, using the angle grinder and the flap disc, I put the two pieces together and sanded them down to size. After a bit, I did throw the blade in there just to ensure I wasn't going to be over sanding. After getting the handle close to where I wanted it, I did use some 5-minute epoxy for the glue up. I did wrap the handle in some paper towels before clamping, just because I figured it'd be easier to sand the paper towel off than it would be to break the clamp off. After letting that dry for about an hour, I took it out and started cutting off the excess pins. Next, I sanded down the pins to as close as level with the wood as I could, and I also sanded down some of the excess epoxy that squeezed out. Finally, using the Dremel, I cleaned up those metal to wood transition spots and started to better shape the handle. Next, it was time to stain the wood. Here's the thing. Camera fell over. Didn't get the rest of that footage. My bad. I'll do better. But here's the finished product. Overall, really happy with this build and think it turned out pretty well. Definitely a lot of areas that I need to improve on, but that's what building the first one's all about. Also, if you like the leather sheath, keep an eye on my channel because that's a little bit of a sneak peek into the next video.